Darwin Núñez came onto that field as a meme lord joke, and he left 30 minutes later after a really heroic game for the ages. 10 touches, 2 goals, his emotions close to tears. Just a giant moment for the Uruguayan god of chaos. This video podcast is brought to you by Camarena. Oh, the most awarded tequila. If you're watching this on YouTube, remember, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming podcasts and our exclusive interviews with Premier League stars all season long. We back! Speaking to all football fans all over the world, and especially Mr. Timothée Chalamet. That gent is, I think, officially now the greatest ball knower on the entire planet. And he will have loved all of this weekend of action. I'm sure he watched every kick, right? With away win after away win. League-leading Liverpool, Houdini their way to glory. At the last, Darwin Núñez, proving he's not just there for your memes, people. Arsenal, proved once again that they are 2 title challengers. What Brad Pitt's catfishing body double is to, well, I guess Brad Pitt. And Tyler Adams and his delirious war cherry sacked the entire city of Newcastle. Manchester City's demise has been greatly exaggerated, as has Manchester United's comeback. And David Moyes became the first Everton manager to beat Tottenham at home since, checks notes, well, David Moyes. Can we play Spurs every week? Not sure it works like that, but we will break all of this down with the Timothée Chalamet of Harrogate, Yorkshire, from The Athletic. It's my friend. Hey up, it's Mr. Rory Smith.
I thought I'd find you in quite chipper mood, Rog.
I'm full of love and hate and fear and loathing. That's what comes from victory, and then you realise it's just your 4th of the season, and it kind of makes you think, oh my God, there's darkness even amidst the joy. But let's get right into the hard-hitting questions everyone in the football world's asking Rory. It's asked by Old Gumbo on our YouTube, who says, why have we not been introduced to Rory's dog yet? Outrageous.
The dog will appear at some point, but he's not like Beetlejuice. He doesn't come when he's bidden. Like, he just appears. Like a true villain.
Tell us about the dog. Name. People need name. We need the basics, Raw, because we do occasionally hear the dog. We see a nose in the background, just opening the door, checking out what Master Rory is up to. But tell us, give us the basic facts.
The dog is called Hector.
Who chose that one?
I did. Not named for Jonas Hector or Hector Bellerin. Named for the hero of the Iliad, Hector.
Who was named after Hector Bellerin.
Who was named for Hector Bellerin. And he is older than he thinks he is, and he is my eternal companion. That's the dog. The dog is just kind of there. He's like he's just a spirit animal. He is there. He is present where I am present.
But he is a real dog. It's not just a fiction of your imaginary friend.
It's hard to tell these days, Rog, but I think he's real.
What kind of a dog is he?
He's an English Cocker Spaniel, which is different to an American Cocker Spaniel. But he's a very badly trained but entirely lovable English Cocker Spaniel.
What part of the song is that? You say Cocker Spaniel, we say Kirkus. But how is he different to an American Cocker Spaniel? I mean,
this is for our other podcast.
You just drive on the different side of the road.
Dog breeding through the ages. I think American Cocker Spaniels are a bit thinner and slightly more snub-nosed. That, I think, is the difference. And obviously, English Cocker Spaniels, snootier.
There's no doubt. That doesn't even have to be implied. It's very clear. But American Cocker Spaniel owners, tune in, have your say on this hard-hitting football show at meninplace@gmail.com. You know my dog, Martin Scorsese, the Italian truffle hound, who I was going to name Carlo Ancelotti, but then he left us the week we got Martin, and I realised I should never name him after anything in football. But my dog is utterly in love, as am I, with Iliman Ndiaye. Martin starts humping a pillow every single time and Ndiaye gets on the ball. Just to be clear, it's training. Martin Scorsese's training. My wife listens to this. I just admit it's my responsibility, and the training is partial. And you can ask any FedEx man that dares drop a parcel off at my house about that. But when I see Martin hump that pillow watching Everton attack, I've got to be candid. I've never been prouder.
How do you train him to do that? That feels like something you've done on purpose.
I've not trained him to do a lot in life, but I think he feeds off my excitement. I would imagine there's probably a connection between. I think watching his master hump a pillow whenever they get on the board.
Should I say it sounds a lot like a learned behaviour? This is what we do now. I see.
Yes, this is how we do it. But when I watch Martin do it, and I say I've never been proud, I just realised telling you this show. I've never been proud. That includes anything that my children do, Raw. Does that make me a bad person?
Not really. No, I think your bond with your dog is closer than your bond with your children. That's perfectly normal. Does that mean that Martin Scorsese sort of spent the better part of this weekend just spent and exhausted?
Like a cigarette post-coital. Which isn't learned behaviour. I just want to be clear, children, and we better dive in away from our other podcast, dog training today. This weekend of wonder, we're going to break it all down, but I want to quickly tell you about what is going on the Men in Blazers World Headquarters this week. We've got, and I'm really elated about this, we've got an interview launching this week with the remarkable Ryan Reynolds coming on our show, latest episode of This Week in Wrexham, powered by our friends at Stoke Cold Brew Coffee. And I love this conversation. Ryan, he talks about Wrexham's success, his ownership, lessons of life learnt through ownership. And he also, I asked him if he dreams of Wrexham in the Premier League. And he said, I'd be a moron not to, which is pretty honest. This interview drops on our YouTube and our podcast feed on Wednesday. Subscribe to both of those right now. And a special television version will be available next Saturday on Peacock, along with every episode of the Men in Blazers Series 11 of our show, including last weekend's, which I loved with Magnus Carlsen. But first, I want to raise a third first Michelob Ultra of the day to the memory of the great, remarkable, singular David Lynch, who died last week and was such an influential thinker for so many of us who grew up in an age when outsider culture first began to perforate the mainstream. To watch David Lynch culture as a teen in the remote north of England was to watch surreal avant-garde creativity finally buckle like the vanilla commercial narrative that was utterly dominant, and it let a global audience, me amongst them, know that it was fine to think differently. But there was a massive audience who would tune in if you did so. That's really what I felt when I watched everything he did as a teen. Incredible quote of his. I loved listening to him speak. I loved listening to him think. I loved listening to him articulate. I've drawn strength from this many times in my own life. And I offer it to our audience at this time of change and chaos and fear and challenge. David Lynch said, when you're down, when you've been kicked down in the street and then kicked down a few more times until you're bleeding and your teeth are out, then you only have up to go. You get reborn again. Expectations aren't so great because they've taken you away. It's beautiful to be down there. It's so beautiful. God bless David Lynch. I guess talking about relegation without talking about relegation, but an incredible man, wrote.
Yeah, there's a very West Ham sentiment to that sentence, I think.
I think David Lynch would have been probably proper West. He would have loved the juxtaposition between skinheads looking for a fight, bubbles, and tears as they sing a children's song. He would have loved that.
He would have been proper Irons. Let's face it, David Lynch. I think if he'd had a choice. No, yeah, a huge kind of cultural presence. I'm a little bit too young for Twin Peaks, but a huge cultural presence for generations. And there is great wisdom in that line, I think.
Oh, God bless. To the football. And let's start at the beginning with Saturday's breathtaking late show. Brentford 0, Liverpool 2. We can telescope back in time. Coming into this one, Liverpool's halo had slipped just a little. 2 straight draws will do that. That passes as a wobble. I'll just say the rubberneckers. I'm not saying me. I'm just saying the rubberneckers tuned in like buzzards to see the Reds toil at the G-Tech. That's what was wanted. And that first half, I've got to be honest, it was a stalemate. I was braced for second half Liverpool to do their thing. We've talked about that narrative slots adjustment in that second half, but still the front three just appeared flat. On came Darwin Núñez, I think around 65 minutes, was it? That $103 million record transfer, who has just toiled. 1 goal in his last 11 games. Rumours of a move to Saudi. A lot of Liverpool fans hoping the team would bite the Saudi League's arm off for that. Arne Slot had backed Darwin during the week. He said, I have no doubts Darwin will score goals as he always did. And you wouldn't have believed it by the immediate form, because Darwin came on and immediately got the mechanics wrong on a header from close range, which led to the commentator laughing, the Brentford fans singing, and I paraphrase you, just a crap Andy Carroll. Got to be honest, Liverpool reigned in shots and corners. Brentford, though, let the record show they were confident enough in squalls to attack, counter on their own. Alisson, I think, made 7 saves. And it did start to feel like another big Brentford performance at the G-Tech, another big result, and possibly another wobble for Liverpool Football Club. I'm not saying I would have liked that, but I'm not saying it either. But Raw, Brentford, the performance for the first 90 minutes, they are one of a number of smaller teams, and it's a motif of this season. In this era of financial fair play, where the bigger teams have actually had a degree of shackling, and I use that loosely, but these teams have been able to pick up the quality of player. The bigger teams used to just kind of stockpile quality players, bury them in their squad. But you see it is a theme. Bournemouth, Forest, and yes, Brentford, a higher distribution of quality players in this year's Premier League spread across that middle more than ever.
Yeah, do you know what? I think there's a few things going on here. One is the sheer wealth of the Premier League. That Brentford, who are historically a relatively small team, they would be the 3rd team in West London. So that gives you an idea of what we're dealing with in terms of historic size. And that's meant as no disrespect whatsoever. It's just kind of how it is. They have risen up to the Premier League. They have access to all of that lovely, delicious television money, and they can spend it. So that gives that middle order of the Premier League considerable power. Then you have the fact that you've got an increasing number of smart teams in the Premier League. Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, all the bees. They all know how they can take that money and they can spend it really wisely. They shop in unexpected markets. They have a clear profile of player that they want. All the stuff that you're meant to do, that when me and you sit here and talk about it, it sounds really easy. But for some reason, lots of football teams, Everton, can't do. They find it really hard. Those smaller sides have been able to do. And then the third thing, and I think this is new, and I suspect it's to do, this is just like a theory in progress, Rog, I think it's partly to do with those hated financial rules that the Premier League has, which are supposed to be the kind of manifestation of cartel thinking. They're meant to be the things that we put in place to make sure that only red teams won the league. I think they stop the middle order losing those players, and Brentford have a great example in Brian Mbeumo, who's probably their standout talent, I think. Johan Wissa, the other striker, would have a case to be made as well. But Mbeumo is the one that you look at and think, okay, he's probably kind of next off the production line. It would cost an awful lot of money to get Mbeumo out of Brentford, because Brentford don't need the money, because they have that lovely, delicious television revenue. And the teams who might buy him have to look at Mbeumo and think, right, do we want to spend 70, 75, 80 million pounds, $100 million on this player, when they know that if they do that, it might bring them just a little bit too close to be comfortable to the financial rules, to transgressing the financial rules. And the Premier League proved last season, as Everton know, that those rules are to be enforced. And I think what that means is you do have a spread of talent. You don't have this thing where Alexander Isak has already left Newcastle, or Murillo, the central defender at Forest, has joined Chelsea, or Mbeumo has gone to Liverpool. It has helped the Premier League, I think, maybe by accident, maybe by design, spread its talent a little bit more lightly. And that makes games like Brentford, especially away, much more challenging.
Yeah, Liverpool, it's got to be said, it was a barrage of shots. 37, a record for them in a Premier League game. Actually, most shots by an away team since records began being kept. That's actually more shots in one game than Chris Wood has had all season. But still, watching them and their 15 corners, this team who've made football, who've made winning look bloody easy in that first half of the season. Honestly, in this one, for large parts of the second half, they look like Arsenal at their worst, just passing the ball around the edge of the penalty area and able to break down that low block. First 35 shots, rendered useless. This game starting to feel like almost a repeat of the midweek draw at Forest, in which Liverpool were utterly dominant down the stretch but could not convert that dominance. credit to Slot here. I do think he didn't panic. He didn't let the hysteria, the pressure of the title chase and that fear, the tabloid fear of Liverpool choking headlines, didn't let it get to him whatsoever. Kept going. First 35 shots, undenting, but into the first minute of added time, Harvey Elliott fed Trent Alexander-Arnold, driven across, I think ultimately so bloody hard that Darwin Núñez did not have time to think with the defender at his feet. We've talked about this before. This finish was 100% instinctual. So it was effective. That's the working theory. And no one was more delighted. No one was more surprised than Darwin Núñez, who ran off, shirt held up towards the travelling Liverpool fans above his head, showing them his name. I'd say the memo that he sent in that moment, well worth the yellow card, Rory.
Yeah, it felt like a very emotional moment for Núñez, who has kind of been through the ringer over this season, over his entire Liverpool career, because of this disconnect, I guess, between what he could be and what he is. There are times when you watch Darwin Núñez, and I know that he's been kind of presented as Liverpool's agent of chaos, but there's times when you watch him and you see what Jurgen Klopp saw in him when Liverpool originally signed him. He is incredibly hard-working, he's fast, he's strong, he's good in the air, he has absolutely everything to be a truly world-class striker, and then most of the time you watch him shoot and you think, oh, I see, that's the problem. But this was Núñez doing what Núñez does, and I think it is really hard not to argue that he needs less time on the ball. He needs less time to think, he needs less time in the box. As soon as he thinks, generally, he causes himself problems. When he doesn't have time to think, he does what he did at Brentford. And I don't know how on earth you get him into situations where he doesn't have time to think. You have to present him with loads of really difficult chances. There is something in him that I think Liverpool fans think is still worth persevering with mostly, but there also comes a point where strikers have to start scoring goals.
This might be a bit extreme, Raw, but listening to your analysis, might you recommend a frontal lobotomy?
It feels like the sort of thing that you might want to seek a second opinion on, I think. Before I suggest lobotomising Darwin Núñez. Yeah. No, I don't know how you do it. I don't know whether you have to work on his confidence. I don't know whether you have to work on his...
Have a little thing that runs like you do, a little stick with something dangling in front of his eyes that takes his mind off the football. Like a little piece of chocolate.
Oh no, maybe he was like just messing about on his phone at the same time. Yes! Really effective. That's what it is.
That's it. Ultimately, he's been addled by TikTok. He needs so much stimulation. You should let him play football and also just flick through TikToks. I think, I don't like to get cocky, I think we've solved it.
I think we might have done.
And I do think Slot solved it in this game, because a minute later it was 2. It was remarkable. By the way, a case of Slot again repeating his equation, his substitutes doing the business. Chiesa to Harvey Elliott, rolled the ball across the box, and havoc occurred, suddenly surging with confidence. Darwin went onto it. Let the record show, he ran onto it in front of Mo Salah, which is really something. And just slapped it home. A man perhaps born to play at the G-Tech. Maybe that's it at the end of the day. Maybe the lobotomy is a bit extreme. He just needs to play for Brentford. That delicious dink last season. Now this exclamation point double. With, I think, don't like to be hyperbolic, but seismic implications. Can I ask very quickly before we break Liverpool down, is this a win you hand to Arne Slot and say, Jen knows what he's doing, has a calm hand on the tiller? Or do you say, holy crap, man, look at the 90 minutes body of work, and why didn't you do that earlier? Because, woof, this was a bullet dodged.
A little bit of both, although I'm a little bit more sanguine on Liverpool than I was kind of a week ago, when I was starting to think, this is, they're not playing especially well. Results are starting to turn a little bit. Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, there are teams that could catch them. There are games where you are dominant and you have a lot of shots against good teams, and it takes a while to break them down. So I think, to an extent, the fact that Liverpool kept persevering, that is the thing that has to be taken away from the win at Brentford. But that said, I am very much of the view, Rog, that in a title race, you don't want to win too many games in the 91st and 93rd minute. It's better to finish them off early. It's hardcore tactics, that, isn't it?
It's generational cosmic thinking.
I don't want to make it sound like I know too much about football, but I think apparently the earlier you score your goals, the better.
You don't want to give away all these secrets.
No.
By the way, the way Liverpool players hugged Darwin at full time, surrounded him, hugged him. I mean, all of them put their heads against his forehead. I mean, it was genuinely beautiful. It was the gratitude the elation for their teammate, his emotions close to tears. I watched, and remember, listeners, I have no heart. I am dead inside. But even I felt in that moment, a horrible man. I felt, God, I just love football. And I do say this every week now, partially because it makes an idiot out of all of us. We know nothing. Darwin Núñez came onto that field as a meme-lord joke, and he left 30 minutes later after a really heroic game for the ages. 10 touches, 4 shots, 2 goals, after a dart run of 1 goal in 11 games. I think 2 goals all season, and he scored twice in 130 seconds of injury time. Just a giant moment for the Uruguayan god of chaos. And Raw, I don't like to be hyperbolic, but did this feel, watching it for you, in what could possibly be a championship season of destiny, did it feel like an epic Greek poem moment?
Do you know what? I'm going to take you back a little bit, Rog, to explain my reaction to the draw with Nottingham Forest.
Midweek.
That was held up here to an extent as a sign that Liverpool were starting, not to wobble particularly, but maybe their momentum had slowed. And as you know, I'm a relatively negative fan. Like, I will see the cloud behind the silver lining. That is my general approach. Yeah, that's just a fan, Raw.
That's just that's a redundant word.
It's a sensible fan. It's a fan as a fan should be, I think. But I watched that Forest game and I thought, do you know what? Especially in the second half, I thought Liverpool are having an awful lot of shots here against a team that are really good defensively. And as much as those last 5 minutes where Liverpool really could have found a winner did leave me slightly deflated, especially when Arsenal then went and won the North London derby the next day, and you thought, okay, this week's not been great for Liverpool. There was part of me that thought, actually, do you know what? That was a significant performance. They went to a really good team in Forest. They dominated them, I thought, for probably an hour, which is hard to do in that cauldron of the City ground. And they probably should have won. They had enough chances to score 3 or 4 in the second half. And if you add that to what they did at Brentford, which is one of the hardest places to go in the Premier League, it does feel a bit like a test passed. And obviously all results are contingent, and if Liverpool collapse in February or March or April or May, then it will change it. But that was the first time I looked at Liverpool and thought, okay, you've had a little bit of a slump, and you are coming through it in a difficult week of 2 really tricky away games, and you have produced getting on for 60 shots and taken 4 points. That's pretty good going.
Yeah, Rory, in other words, turned to Hector on the couch and said, Hector, I like the cut of our jib. Those exact words. Liverpool end their dry January, which was heartbreaking for Brentford, who honestly played so bloody gamely, defended with valour, left with nothing, only broken hearts. Arsenal fans' broken hearts too. I will say, listening to Liverpool fans chant Darwin's name and end up singing, ironically, the "You're Just a Crap Andy Carroll" song at him as he paraded across the field after the final whistle. In that new context, hearing that song resounded, it was beautiful, like a ballad of appreciation, nourishment and love. But we didn't have a second to dwell on that, because right away our attention shifted to North London for Arsenal 2, Aston Villa, oh my days, 2. Arsenal girding their loins against destiny, as you do. This Villa team that beat them last season in this fixture, beat them twice, beginning the wilt in this game, which denied Arsenal the title. Propelled also, it needs to be said, by 2 men burning with a sense of vengeance known only to Liam Neeson in Taken 1, 2 and 3. That would be Unai Emery and Emi Martinez. That Aston Villa defeat, I think, was the last time that Arsenal had lost at the Emirates. And they took the field. They knew Liverpool had just won in late heroic style. BBC had a great report in which they said there were, quote, groans and gasps at the Emirates as the Liverpool goals flew in, which I just love. Not just groans, also gasps. The Arsenal squad, God bless them, weaker every bloody week. 5th most days lost to injuries, I think, this season. Massive players too. Latest to be out with hamstring knack, William Saliba, with the shield, the sword at corners, and there were so many of those set pieces in the opening exchanges. Arsenal, so game. Rice, Ødegaard driving them forward. This really was like one set piece master from corners going against another set piece coach master. Ollie Watkins flickering occasionally on on one-man charges, but huge relief, huge joy, huge sense of validation for Arsenal. In the 35th minute, Trossard cross, Gabriel Martinelli charged in front of a quite caught off guard young Ian Maatsen, prodded home. Emi Martinez, it needs to be said, got his little paws up to push the ball away. For its second, it seemed like a bloody wonder save, but the ball had crossed the line. So instead of being a hero, he looked a little suspect and weak-wristed, Raw. A couple of inches over the line. The difference between being a hero and a nothing. Honestly, should have counted double for Arsenal fans in a way, seeing the Emi Martinez's agony factored in, Raw.
Yeah, there's a certain animosity there. That's true. I think it's one of the many curses of being a goalkeeper that the closer you get to a shot, the more everyone watching it thinks you should have saved that. Whereas if you just stand still on the other side of the goal, everyone assumes no chance.
Yeah, I'm not
unsavable. Unsavable.
Wayne Rooney came on our show and talked about when he hits the ball from like halfway line. And I asked him, what goes through your mind when you've hit that ball? And he goes, I think of the goalkeeper, and I just say to myself, don't try and save it, mate. Just don't try and save it. You're only going to look like an idiot. And I think probably about 70% of shots you can make the same case about. But into that second half, Arsenal lead doubled in the 55th. An action in the moment. Honestly felt decisive, this. Saka out. Arsenal's threat on the wings has felt almost, and I don't like to exaggerate, it felt like a phantom limb. Bonnie Renee had this great line, I think last week in The Guardian, about how surreal it is to see Ødegaard. And he wrote, Ødegaard keeps on floating out onto the right, still loyal to those fond old Saka spaces, like a mourning dog running sadly around its master's empty armchair and abandoned slippers. That is heartbreakingly beautiful writing. So to see Trossard step up in this game was delicious for large stretches. He drove the ball into the Kenny Loggins danger zone. Who was there? It was Kai Havertz. I was so bloody happy for him. Slapped it in, off Martinez again. So happy for Kai in this moment. Kai is a really intelligent gent. He's clearly a very sensitive human being, very sensitive to his surrounds. As I say, what he's been through this past month, the barrage of anger and zeitgeist personal abuse, I'd call it, aimed at him, aimed at his pregnant girlfriend after he missed a penalty against Manchester United in the FA Cup. For a second, Raw, it felt so good for him to be the hero again. It was a beautiful moment.
He's a player I've got a lot of sympathy with as well, you know, because I'm not sure he's been mistreated throughout his time in England, but he has always kind of been one of those lightning rod players, hasn't he, where anything that's wrong with his team, whether that's Chelsea or Arsenal, seems to be sort of directed through him, and I'm not quite sure that's entirely fair. And do you know what? His goal and assist return this season is really good. He's outperforming his XG. He's leading the line as he's meant to be doing in the style that Arteta wants. I don't think Kai Havertz is the problem with Arsenal. It's just a shame that a lot of Arsenal fans seem to have decided that he is.
It felt like job done in that moment. It really did. I got to be honest, I was surprised how feckless Aston Villa were. It took them an hour to win a corner in this game. But we also knew we held both truths there. Arsenal, job done. But we also know Arsenal never live easy lives. I think they dropped 10 points from winning positions this season. And we knew there wouldn't be a game without a wobble. And it felt like the very first time Villa coiled their fist, very first time they tried to play proactive football, they bloody scored. Ndiaye, that old veteran master archer, lashed in a stunner of a cross. And Tillman stooped to conquer. And then a moment of wonder. Villa about to bring on Duran to replace Ollie Watkins in that competition between the two. Actually, incredible man management when you think about this moment. Durant on the sideline. It's like Villa's own kind of Federer Nadal or Ford Ferrari. Because in that moment, 68th, Arsenal didn't clear a free kick. Matty Cash floated in a ball which skimmed heads agonisingly. And bloody hell, Ollie Watkins, about to go off, just had time and space. I think Partey somehow had lost him to conjure a deeply mischievous finish. He's an incredible story. One of the aspects I love about him was he supported Arsenal as a kid. He's now scored 6 times against the Gunners. This finish, so utterly sublime. It was like just an avant-garde, entrepreneurial piece of innovation. As the late, great David Lynch should say, a man who knows to keep his eye on the donut and not the hole. But Raw, what happened here? But was this the matter of like Villa stepping up, Lucas Digne coming on, bringing his deft attacking sensibility on the flank? Was it mental weakness by Arsenal switching off? Or was it a matter of this defensively, solidly proud Arsenal team just missing Saliba, being unable to control the game without him? Because from 2-0 up to 2-2 is just an agonising piece of Arsenal self-loathing.
Yeah, I think there's no question that the absence of Saliba, the fact that you did have that kind of makeshift defence, so Thomas Partey on the right, Julian Timber playing in the centre, which is a role he has played before, but is not necessarily his kind of strong suit. That, I think, provides mitigating circumstances. But at the same time, Villa were completely out of it at 2-0. After an hour, it looked like the game was finished.
They were never in it.
It was really hard to see Villa kind of... There was no evidence that a Villa comeback was imminent. And then, as you say, sometimes teams do just trying to score a goal out of nowhere. Digne's a brilliant crosser of the ball. Tielemans makes a great run. I think it's probably not tracked quite as assiduously as it should have been by Mikel Merino. And that just gives Villa a little shot in the arm. Suddenly they think, OK, there are holes here we can exploit. In that moment, you shouldn't need William Saliba to be there to think, OK, we have to ride this out for a little bit. That is one of those tests that championship pretenders, championship contenders have to pass. And Arsenal didn't.
We almost seem to have to ask this every week. How would Arsenal respond to a moment of agony? The rest of the game was stretched. It was like two hungry knife fighters pushing for a goal, leaving space in behind. There was more agony for Arsenal. There was the late, great Merino strike, which flicked in off Kai Havertz's hand, even though inadvertent, notched off. Merino also hit a post. Martinez smothering the Trossard follow-up. Nothing more. Just a numbness, and we were left with... they always feel like at this point that they're stock shots that are being reused of lonely Arsenal fans losing their minds, alone at their seats when the stadium's emptied. By the way, do these people do it to be on camera raw? And they know that our performative society kind of rewards these moments, or do they do it because they are in true existential agony over the football? Does that question not matter anymore?
I think it doesn't matter. There's no question that the emotions behind it are sincere. My own interpretation, and this is just me, Rog, I don't claim to be speaking for anybody. I think a lot of people now, and I probably include myself in this, we kind of behave like we're on camera all the time. Like, you know that if you're in a football stadium and you kind of know what grief in a football stadium is meant to look like. Yeah. And so you've been fed that image so many times.
Leave me behind, lads. I'm just going to lose my mind here on my own.
I would say that I think there was at least one shot that kind of went around Britain, and I presume it was shown in the US as well, that looked a little bit like someone maybe had hung out for a while in the stands just in case the cameras wanted to pick somebody out looking upset.
A Spurs fan.
But I think we've seen those images so many times now that we know what you're meant to do at the end of a sort of chastening defeat or a dispiriting draw is you're meant to hang around and look sad. But I can offer some solace for Arsenal fans, Roger. I want to do that. I want to provide a positive service. This is not a Manchester City title race for the moment. Manchester City might come back into it, but it's not currently a Manchester City title race. No one's getting 98 points. No one's getting 95 points. I don't think anyone's going to get 90 points. You can draw games, you can drop points, and you can rely on the fact that the other team involved will do the same at some point too. Liverpool still have to go to Villa. That's a really difficult game. They still have to go to Bournemouth. That might be even harder. There will be occasions this season where Liverpool drop points. Arsenal's margin for error is reducing. There's no point pretending that.
You say this every week. It's reducing. It's the decimal point is moving. But you've answered the question of, are they done for the league after they're effectively out of both cups and ultimately the Champions League and the league is what they have to cling on to. I want to credit Villa here for the belief to grind their way back into a game that felt lost. But that title dream, the ground lost on Liverpool, the inability to close out, the fact they were ahead, couldn't defend that lead. I think it's 10 games now which they have had leads and not held on. Those 12 points drop. That would leave you telling your mates, go down the pub, I'll meet you later. I'm just going to quietly lose my crap here on camera. The fact that you are masters of your own destiny and you self-harm your way, that is an agony. Also, 137 seconds of destruction that led to Liverpool's victory, and that inch of Kai Havertz's chest and hand being the difference between victory and defeat for Arsenal. That is also the thin line between happiness and sadness, between title wonder and wanting and dreaming and shattered dreams again. I think that only adds to the agony. But practical question, Raw. Now that all the media, January transfer window, saying Arsenal must buy striker now. Miguel Delaney tweeted, Arsenal almost need to sign a striker just to change the mood. It feels like they've been wretched in this kind of angst for much of the season. They need to break out of it. English TV's begging them to buy Victor Osimhen. Can you just bolt on a massive, powerful centre-forward rule to the Arteta idea?
No. Obviously. That's why he hasn't done it. Funny if I do agree with Miguel, I think there are times when a signing has a kind of morale element to it that is valuable. And it also has a tactical aspect, which is that if you put a new player, a high-quality new player, into an already very good team, then it just makes them a little bit unpredictable for a few weeks. And most Premier League teams now, most football teams now, are so forewarned that often they are forearmed, that the big test for the teams that want to win the title is you have to go up against teams who know everything about you, especially after one round of fixtures. So I think there are legitimate reasons to say if Arsenal signed a striker, they might then be able to put together the sort of run that would overhaul Liverpool. And that if they don't sign a striker, then doing that is not impossible, but much less likely. The counter-argument has always been, you're not putting a striker into a vacuum. The striker has to fit into the system, and the thing that striker does will come with kind of drawbacks, just they won't do other things. And Arteta has clearly decided that the overall kind of collective is better suited by having a striker like Kai Havertz or Gabriel Jesus when he's fit, rather than a big kind of Osimhen figure. The thing that might change it is Jesus being out for the season. That is the thing that might make Arteta think, okay, look, there is, maybe not Osimhen, but the guy who was third on our list, the one who's not quite ready, who's still a bit raw, who's maybe not as exciting or as complete or whatever it is as Osimhen or Alexander Isak, who's the other one they really liked. Beto, we might have to sign Beto just to run some yards for us effectively, just to do some minutes. That is
Beto's
possible.
Music. Newcastle 1, Bournemouth 4 in one of the most delicious games of the weekend. Newcastle, the nation's most informed team. Club record 9 straight wins. Eddie Howe, by the way, this is amazing, openly, and I respected this, welcoming talk of a title challenge, facing up to the tiniest powerhouse in the Premier League, up the Las Vegas Golden War Cherries, in what a game known as the Eddie Howe Memorial Classico. And it was a game of wonder, high tempo, no holds barred, perpetually on the verge of fisticuff football, in which Bournemouth just swaggered into Cauldron St James's Park. By the way, Bournemouth with just 11 first-team players fit. This is we're not going to be able to talk about this aspect, but they are as knackered and as beat down as anybody. But they're also utterly undaunted. I'm going to get Bill Foley, the owner, on the show because I'm fascinated how this culture's made. They took the game by the scruff of the neck with that press. It was just a masterclass. I watched it with admiration of wonder as an Everton fan, looking at this front foot Iraola football inside 6 minutes. Kluivert, son of a legend who once played for Newcastle, hat-trick hero in this one. Not one of them penalty kicks, let the record show. Kirkes still running hard into the 97th minute, smashing home the capper just so he could take his shirt off and get his bits out. Like a young Hungarian Patrick Swayze. Crowd silence. What was crazy was that Iraola, Bournemouth manager, he knew Newcastle had the fastest hot hand of a counter-attack in the league. Alexander Isak, on a historic 8-game scoring streak, didn't have a single shot on goal in this one. Bournemouth chose to fight fire with fire, Raw. That was what was crazy. They just pressed so bloody fearlessly, and they almost just choose to, you think you're fast, we're gonna go right for your strength and turn it into a weakness.
Yeah, that's what Bournemouth have been doing to teams all season. People, I think, are going to have to start categorising Bournemouth a bit differently because they are really good. They are not a kind of surprise package who've had a kindly run of fixtures, and that, ultimately, if they come to visit your team, that should be a home banker. Bournemouth just don't stop. They have a sort of interchangeable set of attackers who all do vaguely different things but play in exactly the same way. They've got a brilliant structure. They've got an amazing attitude. The fact they went to Newcastle, who were on this kind of hot streak, and didn't really have a squad, didn't have any substitutes particularly of any real experience, but did exactly what Bournemouth always do, is genuinely one of the sort of most impressive coaching feats I've seen in years. Bournemouth are a genuine force. They play with as clear an identity as any team in the Premier League, I think.
What's fascinating to me is that during his sabbatical, when he left Bournemouth, I think in 2020, Eddie Howe actually went to study the way Iraola was playing then at was he at Vallecano?
Yeah.
Studied his ideas on pressing, on counter-attacking, but still the sorcerer is ahead of the apprentice. I find Bournemouth to be ecstatic to watch. They press so hard without remorse. Their injury list, other managers would just complain. Two of their leading strikers out, one for the rest of the season. And I said this last week, and I mean it now. The American owner, Bill Foley, promised European football when he took over the club. Everybody just laughed because of his accent. They are laughing no longer. They smashed Newcastle. They really did. They are 1 point off the Champions League places. They are living in a fruit-filled dreamland. And honestly, it is strategic alchemy to witness. Iraola, this record this season, has beaten Arteta, Guardiola, Ange, Amorim, now Eddie Howe. He's a giant killer. Up next for the Ches, and I do call them the Ches only because their social media manager tries to call them the Ches, which I don't know if it's catching on, but it is very funny.
Not here, I would say.
Of the Ches. You can't give yourself a nickname in life, can you, Ro? You can't be like, guys.
No, that's the golden rule. Yeah.
You can't.
You can't just be like, guys, call me Snake. Yeah,
call me
exactly.
Tigger. That's my name now. I'm only answering to the Ches. That's my new nickname. Maybe if I give it to myself, then people will start calling Bournemouth it. They play Forest next, which is an incredible game. Then Liverpool gives me... I do need to shout out Tyler Bloody Adams, new mayor in Newcastle. Ferocious. There's a statistic last week. He's had the most tackles per 90, the most interceptions per 90, had an assist in this one. Actually just won a tackle and the ball dropped to Kluivert to smash home. I'm sure Tyler told him he couldn't miss after the great pass he'd given him. Huge drive home for the Bournemouth fans, but a happy one. Rob, can we talk about this quickly? 695-mile round trip. I think it's the longest in the Premier League as a road trip. Bournemouth fans had to wake up at 2:40 to drive all the way to Newcastle to get there in time for the kickoff. Whole length of the country. Thanks to all the practical Americans who wrote into us over the weekend saying, why don't they get the plane? Doesn't quite work like that in England. But there is something funny about Americans and English people. It's not just the Cocker Spaniels rule. Distances feel 10 times longer in England. I'm not quite sure why. Or
roadworks.
Yeah. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's just roadworks everywhere all the time.
Is that
No.
I mean, it does feel in England, in California, you will drive 700 miles just to drop your kid off at a sleepover. In England, it feels like you are travelling centuries when you do we have a different sense of time and space? Is what I guess I'm asking.
I mean, this feels like one of those kind of off the cuff questions that I should definitely be able to answer immediately.
Science.
I think, if you're dealing with like massive distances all the time, that must make a difference. Bournemouth to Newcastle is a really long way, not just because it's not like there's not a straight road. You have to kind of, wend your way through the country. There's all these massive cities in the way. What I like about this is I think we should now rename this instead of the Eddie Howe Memorial Derby. I feel like we should name this game in honour of Mark Wahlberg, the doyen of getting up really early in the morning and doing stuff. Because that's what you have to do for Bournemouth Newcastle. It should be the Wahlberg Derby.
Wahlberg. Would be.
They went full Wahlberg, the Bournemouth fans. They were up at 2:30.
Wahlberg.
Affirmations, Yoda session, free weights, get on the coach to Newcastle.
Yeah, you can imagine Wahlberg and Michael C. Jordan just both getting out the ice bath and just watching this game together. Up the bloody Ches, hashtag 4am club. Nottingham Forest 3, Southampton 2, another team who are absolutely on a magical journey that is humanly bloody thrilling. This Forest team in the relegation zone for so much of last season, facing up to a One who are very much in it now. Southampton will not have the opportunity to mimic Forest's resurrection. I will say their season horribilis, I'm not sure if that's a word, just continued. Forest ran riot in that first half, capitalising on defensive mistake after defensive mistake. Scored early and often, 3 up inside 41 minutes. Chris Wood tied his highest 14 Premier League goals in a season notch. Here's one amazing thing about Forest. Their economy, 3 goals off 3 shots on goal. Chris Wood, 14 goals off an incredible 33 shots on goal. I'm going to speak to him on Wednesday morning. I can't wait to hear how he does it, how he's feeling about it all. Their fans delirious. There was a moment in this one where the ref came over to the VAR screen and the Forest fans were behind him just offering him credit cards and cash to make it. Doesn't work that way. You don't give the referee money to their face, do you, Raw?
No, you give them jewellery and then you take them to a nice restaurant and buy them a steak.
Yes. Or you just give them too much money to come and referee in your own nation state. Those are the ways. We're just giving you winning ways. You could actually become a great manager by listening to this podcast. By the way, got to be said, Southampton did rally. They made it 3-2 in injury time. And the 95th minute, if you only see one moment of action, see this one. A quite ecstatic clearance off the line by the coveted Ola Aina allowed them to hold on, condemning Southampton manager Juric, I do love him, to become the first ever in club's history to lose his first 5 games. Saints' 18th defeat in 22 matches. Forest now move level on points of Arsenal in 3rd place. They take the lead, they hold on, they play simple, composed football with a powerful structure. They have the joys of no European distractions. Everyone is waiting for them to drop off. They have a 6-point cushion over the team in 5th place. They're not going to drop off, are they, Will?
No, they're in this race until the end now, I think. They're certainly in the kind of squabble for Champions League football, particularly given that 5th place will probably get a Champions League spot next season because of the way the Champions League now works. They're in the title race. I think we've had a big conversation over here about whether Forest are in the title race, and it's one of those kind of things, one of those constructs around football that I find really odd. They're 3rd in the table. Obviously, they're in the title race. That's how the table works. That's the point of it. That's why we have it. That's literally what it's to do. It's to establish which teams.
That's what the table does, is it?
Yeah,
I thought it was just
that's
to
the
show
purpose
you
of it.
How many points deductions you'd had and just how low you should go. Another team experiencing just dreamland experiences. Manchester United, well, actually not you. 1, Brighton and Hove Albion 3. After a 2-pay of a win midweek, come from behind Stormer against bottom feeders Southampton, courtesy of a heroic late 12-minute hat-trick by the quite stunning Ahmad. By the way, my lasting memory from that game, the Rats on the field, in-game at Old Trafford, really almost 2 on the nose. Shakespearean level symbolism. Back to earth with a bump against bloody Brighton. Tiny Brighton in total control. Won for the 3rd straight season at Old Trafford, which is both normal now and still incredible. This one, all the old dark Stranger Things narratives of Manchester United conceding the early goal within 5 minutes down the flanks because of the lack of real wing backs. 1 shot on target all game, that being a Bruno Fernandes penalty. Then conceding from routine crosses, which bamboozle the entire backline. Andre Onana going back to ball is a bar of soap in the bathtub, comedy cock-up, gifting goal settings. Andrews Onana, too soon Ravens fans, I know, too soon. And Manchester United slumping meekly to a 5th defeat in 8 games. Raw, this is the 6th home Premier League defeat of the season, the most after 12 games since, is it 1894 when Roy Hodgson was a kid. Where are you big picture on Ruben Amorim? Because yes, he's doing his thing where he's distancing himself, saying this team is quote historically bad. We are the worst team in the history of Manchester United, which distances himself from any kind of blame. But they win games against Manchester City. They have that 2-2 draw at Liverpool, which was heroic. The valour of toughing out in the FA Cup. But now they lose. They've lost to Arsenal in the league, Forest, Tottenham, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Wolves, and now this, Brighton doing the double on them. Where are you? Big point with this worst team in history.
Yeah, I think that feels slightly excessive to me. There have been times when Manchester United are not like a primal force in English football, and there have been times when they were relegated years and years and years ago. So I think historically it's not accurate, but I get what Amorim means, that they are very much not living up to United's proud history, but to the standards that have been set. I think, like you said at the start, Great wisdom from you, Rog. The comeback was always overblown. They drew at Liverpool, which was a great result for United, in a style that was basically reminiscent of an underdog going to a bigger team and holding out. And that's not what Manchester United should be doing. And similarly at Arsenal, partly because of the Dalot sending off, there was an element of kind of backs to the wall, grit, let's get through this, let's show them about it. And it always felt to me like Brighton at home would be a real test of where they'd actually come. For all the talk of mindset and mentality, and we've changed it around, and we've managed to kind of, we're paying attention now, we're going to be better. Brighton at home is the exact sort of game where United have fallen short in the last, 3 years for a start, and probably for much longer. I think the amount of work that needs to be done to this Manchester United team is growing almost every day, to be honest. I still think there's only one player who's really kind of cemented their case as a player for the Amorim era, and that is Ahmad. There's a couple of others who you look at and think they're better than they were. Ugarte, I think, has been fine. De Ligt a little bit. Lenny Yoro's come back in. There are players who I'm sure will still be at Manchester United in 3-4 years' time. But in terms of taking them to where they want to be, it's such a long process. And to be honest, there will come pressure on Amorim at some point, because Manchester United, like Tottenham, are very much at the wrong end of the Premier League table, and that's not really acceptable for a club of that size.
It is amazing. When I chanted the weekend, by the way, Brighton fans, we thought you were back, but you're still SHIT. United are 13th. They are level on points with West Ham. They are just ahead of Spurs and Everton. It's like a league within a league of the drowned and the doomed. And it is remarkable. To me, watching Amorim navigate leading it, but making sure it's clear that he is in no way accountable. That is a dance which is delicate and incredibly difficult to maintain into the medium term. Ipswich Town 0. Manchester City 6. Your defending champions arrive at quite febrile Portman Road. By the way, not your father's Manchester City. I'm old enough to remember their winners are just 3 of the last 12 Premier League games, but they ran rampantly over quite naive Ipswich in this one, who charged into it with the optimism of a fighter who thought they had a puncher's chance. But City pretty quickly realised they could break the Tractors Boy press early and often. It's like watching one of those Japanese videos they make where two professionals play 100 children on a football field. Just the quality gap, the domination, the fear at times in the decision making for Ipswich. KDB hat-trick of assists. Foden, no goal in his first 11 games. How we laughed. But now 6 in his last 5. Lots of finger machine gunning down the crowd. It was utterly dominant. McAtee scored his first league goal for the club. City fans revelled in every single moment, singing "You're going down" with United. We do need to quickly discuss Haaland, who scored in this one, made it 5-0, 17th league goal of the season. Fresh off a deal rule, we got to talk about. City announced they have tied up the generational talent until he's a very old man. Longest current contract of any single player in the European leagues. It's actually American style. It's like a Juan Soto Major League Baseball contract. A record new 9.5-year deal, tying him to the champions until 2034, when I think he'll be 34 years of age. Gent is no doubt a phenom. Scored 112 goals in only 126 games since his arrival. Farmers League, he's made it look at times. $608,000 a week. By the way, same as Ipswich's entire wage bill, roughly. But I need to ask you, is that signing an indicator that his agent knows that the charges, which are said to be the announcement of the punishment is said to be imminent, that it won't be a relegation, that it won't be anything too severe? Or would he sign with such certainty? I guess I'm saying. You're a criminologist, Raw. Tell us what it means.
I think it's unlikely that Erling Haaland's agent, in all honesty, would have any reliable guidance on how that's going to go. As you say, the verdict is expected relatively soon, but it's a legal process. The only people I think who will know as things stand with any certainty are the lawyers drawing it up, and maybe I guess like their clerks and stuff might have a clue. But I'd be surprised if that's kind of filtered down to Alfie Haaland. But you never know. City might have a better idea. I guess they might have a sense of, okay, we think this is the way it's leaning. My instinct is to say, to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure this or City's transfer activity necessarily gives us insight into which way that has gone. Because I think you can make the case that City would have done it either way. I would imagine that there will be a relegation release clause in Erling Haaland's contract. A contract that valuable will be ridden with clauses anyway. There will be some sort of provision for, act of God, effectively. So I'm sure that if the worst does happen, that Erling Haaland won't be locked into it. I've got to admit, I find it a slightly weird thing to do, regardless of that, the outcome of that case, to be honest. Erling Haaland is the most lavishly paid player in England. I'm not quite sure why you as a club would lock him into a contract that valuable that will probably take him over his peak. Do you want to be paying Erling Haaland that much money when he's 33? I think you probably don't. So why have you done it now? I find it a little bit unusual. Not to say bad necessarily, but certainly unusual. I raised an eyebrow when I saw the length of the contract.
That relegation clause. Welcome to Everton, Big Earl! But just like that, City back into the top four. Those 3-4 days of mania, and did feel like a free fall for Pep when he felt like he was on the brink, seemed to be behind them. Actually, he said something beautiful before the game that I do want to read out. He said, in life, sport especially, there's no red carpet in front of you. There are big problems, and they define teams. They define football players, human beings in difficult moments. It's important to think that the difficult times will finish. And I mention it because this is a news week in which we learned that Pep and his partner, Christine Serra, have decided to separate after 30 years together. Jen is my age, an age at a time when a lot of people split up. It is fascinating, a reminder, if we needed it again, that our football heroes are human and feel things. Like life transitions, midlife crises, revelation of life choices, reflection upon them, high anxiety, self-doubt, all of those things, the angst, the questioning of priorities. I know a lot of you are feeling all of that. We're on the outside, so I don't want to prognosticate, Raw, but it is a reminder. We watched this man scrape his face after defeats, really suffer. Lecture this week, adult autograph hunters. This is an amazing clip telling them to do more with their lives. GFOP Will Cheney from California sent us a letter at meninblazers@gmail.com. He said, Pep's tick of absolutely chugging water breaks my heart. I think as much as he's talking to the autograph hunters as individuals, could he have been talking to himself? What are your dreams? Prepare. Do better. Is he a man in search of meaning in a meaningless and cruel universe? He's almost like a great Camus character, Rog and Rory. Do you think Pep can find his why?
I think, is it not okay? What if the thing you want to do in life is to get Pep Guardiola's autograph? Is that not okay?
That, by the way, that's almost that. I said this to you a couple of weeks ago and you told me it was a crap quote, and it is a weird one. Jonathan Safran Foer once wrote, they say time heals all wounds, but what if the wound is time? You're saying, what if their goal was that? That's just incredible, mind-blowing. That's like thinking about infinity, Raw. I'm not going to have our listeners do that because it does bend your brain. GFOP at BL Grossman asked the big question, who's going to dress Pep now? I just actually think he's going to become more and more dishevelled on the sideline, or actually more and more unhinged. He'll have like pockets moving to ever more avant-garde spaces, Raw. Just like, ultimately, Pep is just going to end up one day on the sideline just wearing a codpiece and nipple piercings, right?
I think it's possible that Pep Guardiola's innate style, rather than the very sort of fashionable look he's always said he's been given to him by his wife, is kind of like Fred Durst style board shorts and a string vest. Give it a year. That's what he's wearing. Big chain from one belt loop to another.
He's in the slingshot where, is it a nipple piercing? Then he's going to turn up shirtless and be like, yeah, we were right. City play PSG midweek, and then they host Chelsea next weekend. The possibility of making the "we back" statement is within his grasp. By the way, poor Ipswich, fans amazing, kept singing for McKenna and their team even after they were utterly walloped. They play Liverpool at Anfield next weekend. Chuckles, I'm in danger. In other games, quickly, West Ham 0, Crystal Palace 2, honeymoon well and truly over for Graham Potter. 2 losses in his first 3 games, depleted at the back, cumbersome in the midfield, losing one attacker after another, failing to register a single shot on target. And Palace, my God, potency incarnate. Jean-Philippe Mateta netted a double and seems to be able to finish no matter what now. 8 goals on the season for him, 8 assists for the on-form Eberichi Eze. I love that man. Reality bites for poor Graham, shuffling through formations and is in real danger of having to push the smash glass and activate Danny Ings panic button. Another beleaguered manager, actually in even more bloody danger. This one, hard to believe. Ruud van Nistelrooy is Leicester 0, Fulham 2. An incredibly improvised header and near turf height. Find this one if you've not seen it, from Emile Smith-Rowe. And a second half fine finish from another accomplished shot misser, Adama Traore. Led to instant boos from the Leicester crowd. Same crowd who wanted predecessor Steve Cooper gone, now chanting against poor Ruud. His idea of expansive football just totally undermined by defensive fragility. 7 game losing run. Raw, is it safe now to call Southampton and Leicester relegated and one more slot available?
Yeah, I mean, the points give you a little bit more hope for Leicester, but it really doesn't look good. Like there's a real, they're the one team that should have been competitive straight away in the Premier League. They went down by mistake, by mismanagement. They were not a team that should have been relegated at the time. They came back up. They should have been in a position to kind of strengthen and make themselves relatively solid. And it just looks like they are in free fall now.
Oh, and I take no pleasure in that. Chelsea host Wolves this afternoon in a game which you could see Enzo Maresca leap back into the top 4 before they travel to that Manchester City Dato destiny next week, which leaves us with, did this really happen? Or was it all the most sensual of David Moyes' tinged dreams? Everton 3, Tottenham 2, 15th against 16th. Big Ange and his terribly confounding Spurs. Plus 11 goal difference before this one, but wilting. Injuries, we have to mention them. Rebecca Lowe called this a relegation 6-pointer before kick-off, which slight exag, but not that much. 2 teams who had not taken a single point between them in 2025. Really the Super Bowl sadness. Spurs had Dom Solanke out now, Brennan Johnson, but they had so little optimism. Everton, bloody hell. By the way, 9 wins over Tottenham in the history of the Premier League. I did not see this coming. I want to be totally clear. And Everton, who scored just 5 times since November. But we entered with energy, real energy. And in a weekend of shock meme lords scoring goals, there was none more shocking to me than this one. On 13 minutes, ball worked into the box to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a beautiful play, smells so great, but he just looks so bloody miserable. A footballer who, got to be kind of, if you watch Everton every week, you realise how low his confidence is. Whenever the ball came to him in the final third, he was filled with dread. He was filled with fear of failure. He didn't even want to pull his foot back to shoot it. He would pass rather than shoot. I mean, the Sean Dyche kind of tongue lashing. You could hear it almost whenever he took possession. So to see what he did here, the way he took this chance, and audacious going inside, outside, inside and slotting home, it was astonishing to see. I know Donna a little bit. He's a player who needs to be loved. Came on our show the first time, talked about how Carlo Ancelotti made him believe after Sam Allardyce bled his confidence. I watched that goal, Raw, and I thought this was David Moyes putting his arm around Dominic Calvert-Lewin, telling him to love football once again with confidence like he had done when he was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, incredible for that to be the goal that he scores. Normally, to come out of a run of form, you need an instinctive one like a Nunez goal at Brentford, or you need something basically quite lucky. Big deflection, one goes off your knee, that sort of thing. To score such a sort of delicate, intricately crafted goal when you have lost all confidence, it's really hard not to watch it and assume that Moyes has made quite a big difference to Calvert-Lewin's mindset basically straight away.
First goal of the Moyes era. First goal we'd seen him score in 337 minutes. Of course, my instinct was, God, we've got something precious to lose. Tottenham tried to attack. I have to say, watching Jake O'Brien, the young central defender, brought in by Sean Dyche, but never played in a completely befuddling tactical decision. Watching this 23-year-old fling himself around in that back three and just play and pass with Everton, by the way, passing. Everton trying to play the ball out the back. Everton, it was like watching Dumbo fly for the first time. I don't like to exaggerate. I don't know how much of it was just lads, it's Spurs. But the confidence, it was stunning. The belief, the lack of failure, the lack of realising that if you lose, Sean Dyche is going to get a wet towel out and give you a rat tail. I mean, this was confidence. This was being willing to fail. That's what you want from Everton. And on the half hour, I don't like to be hyperbolic, but watching this goal was better than sex. Ndiaye, beautiful Ndiaye, pillow humping Ndiaye. He took possession in just inside the Spurs half, ran with menace on the mind, so fluid the way he runs. It's like watching Kyrie Irving just handles. The way he duped Dragusin, that dime store Zlatan out of his socks, roofed the ball past the Stunkinski. Raw, it was so erotic. I mean, when you think of what man has created culturally that is essential for lovemaking, you think of Marvin Gaye, Sexual Hearing, obviously number one. You think of like Luther the Vandross, maybe Endless Love. I will make a bold claim. That Ndiaye goal is number 3 on that list.
I think that might say quite a lot about your sex life, if I'm honest. It was a nice goal. I didn't have quite the same reaction to it.
Did you not?
No, but
that's better than like the whole of Prince's oeuvre.
Again, it did suggest a player who's trying to cut loose a little bit, a player who's remembering that he's meant to do things that are special and different and exciting, and that is what Everton need.
Oh, it is. We need a lot. David Roy's delighted on the sideline, whiter hair, craggier face. But God, it's like watching sweet grandfather return and exile evil stepdad. Oh, grandfather, the wood carver, he's back. It was magical to see. We do need to touch upon Spurs. It was an agony. They did have a late fight back. Richarlison is contractually obliged goal. He always scores against us. A flicker of defiance. Was honestly proper terrifying down the stretch. Not going to lie. We held on. Just our second win in 25 Premier League games against Spurs. A Spurs fan singing, "You're nothing special. We lose every week" with gallows humour. 5th defeat in 6 games. Fan base who've seen their team smash Man City in November, then just tailspin. I think they're 18th in the form table since then. 12th league defeat of the season already. This is generationally bad, Raw. Postecoglou's squad, we need to acknowledge, is truly crushed by injuries. But they have just taken, 5 points from the last possible 30, 12 defeats. 2 late goals, maybe give him a little foothold. Tabloids fueling that he should be fired. Is he the real problem, as opposed to just like a lack of squad investment? And would his dismissal solve anything fundamental?
I've always thought that my answer to that would be no, because I quite like Postecoglou. I like what he stands for. I think that the way he approaches it is basically right in terms of you have to have that identity. It has to come first. And if you start messing around with it, then basically you become a club that stands for nothing. And if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything, as we all know, Rog. But at the same time, I did have a kind of moment of realisation over the weekend that even with the injuries, I'm not sure the team that he's putting out should be 15th in the Premier League. That strikes me as being quite bad. And I think you're starting to see little signs that maybe the team are starting to doubt the manager themselves. And when that happens, then you have a real problem.
That game against Leicester next week is utterly massive. The Carabao Cup semi-final, even bloody bigger. I can't believe I just said that. Everton, again, 4th win on the season, which is pathetic. At Anton Shulsky Instagrammed us. Such an Everton win. Snatching victory from the jaws of victory. Yes, the Moyes are back in town again. This is a first nervy win down the stretch for David Moyes. It feels so good to watch the team you love feel good about football again. That is ultimately it. My younger son, Oz, when the result came through, he texted me. He said simply, "Dad, thank you for making me a Blue," which did instantly make me wonder why I hadn't received that for the first 20 games of the season, Raw, and what psychological damage I've done on the kid.
Yeah, that's not normally what any of your children say to you about you inflicting Everton upon them, but it's nice that occasionally it pays off.
It's been so bloody long, and I'll say for suffering Arsenal fans, Spursiness is the wind between their wings at the moment. Dr. Tottenham cures all. Let's wrap up quickly with a letter from our mailbag, which overflows. Thanks to all of you for your messages. Raw, can you quickly do the honours from this one, which was written to us at meninblazers@gmail.com.
And it comes from Matty. It says, "I'm a long-time listener and huge fan of you and the pod. This May, I'm embarking on the greatest journey of my life, fatherhood. My wife and I will be welcoming a baby girl. Bonus. Something we have wished and waited for quite a long time. I'm using my spare time before dadhood by travelling to England with one of my best friends this weekend to see the three biggest clubs in England play: Liverpool, Everton and Millwall. As the wisest person I know of in the football world, I'm reaching out to you for any advice you may have on fatherhood, how to survive the den, and the best takeaways, must-dos in Liverpool. Any advice you can share would be much appreciated.
Oh, Matty, what a beautiful letter. Congratulations to you and your partner at this magical time of your life. Raw, you surviving the den? It's old school. It's a bit like
I have been to the den. I would say be prepared to hear people who are really, really too old to be using particularly vicious swear words. That would be my advice for the den.
What's your fatherhood advice?
My fatherhood advice, I think, is probably just enjoy it, stock up on sleep beforehand, and if I was to be very, very sincere and earnest, I'd say that remember that even when in the really difficult bits, they will always do something every single day that is so cute your heart breaks. God. And that makes it all worthwhile.
I will say the den thing, I think you'll feel when you leave just an amazing amount of relief and also a degree of survivor's guilt, I believe. But Liverpool, Google Men in Blazers, visit Britain, Liverpool. You'll find a lot about our trips to the city, which include the best pub toilets in the world. And also the quite haunting, my favourite thing, Anthony Gormley's sculpture, Another Place on Crosby Beach, which is amazing. In terms of parenting, I will echo what Raw said. I do actually avoid giving advice because every baby is unique. They can be good, they can be colicky and cry a ton through no fault of their own. You have no idea how you'll react to becoming a dad. Emotionally, you've got no idea. Or your partner can go in so many ways. And I do think each family unit is as unique as a snowflake. But I will say two things. What Rory said is true. I've worked so bloody hard to make memories. Even in the worst times, I was like aware that when I was woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go and be with a crying baby, savor those moments. That make memories of your hand on the door handle, the sound of a calming baby, the quiet as you put him or her down. And I'm so grateful for all of those bloody memories. And second, quick one, I did learn that volunteering to get up with a newborn early on Saturday morning and then watching the early Premier League game with them in the little baby seaty thing, that counts as childcare and gets you points. So it's a win-win no matter how your team performs. God bless you, Matty. Make memories through football, make memories through fatherhood. And that's it for today. We are filming with Chris Wood this week. We got a Ryan Reynolds interview that I've told you about. We got Emma Hayes, magical interview upcoming. I also have a live show in New York City tomorrow night with a packed crowd of GFOPs coming together to talk about the US men's national team 500 days out from the World Cup. Chris Wood interview coming too. Subscribe to our newsletter to find out everything via our website. But Raw, huge love to you. You Crown Prince of beautiful Harrogate.
It's always a pleasure.
This is Rog sending you big love. Let's not take a second watching football together for granted. And courage.